Hello there, Aguna here, and here to dust off the channel again with something I've wanted to do for years, which I don't know how it would work on Twitch. Anyway, recently with the remakes of Pokemon Diamond and Pearl released, and I kind of bought it with nostalgia in mind. I bought Pearl since it was the one I got for the DS years ago. Before we begin, this is my first ever solo Nuzlocke. This part is written before Lake of Cutie, so let's see if the run succeeds. The rules are as below. I have to catch the first encounter on the route. I had a duplicate cause of enabled for free encounters per route to get more type diversity and not have a full team of Starlies and Bidoofs. I have to give a nickname to every Pokemon I catch. Once the Pokemon faints, it has to be boxed permanently. Battle type is set to switch, but no items in battle. Held items are okay. And lastly, I only accepted NPC Pokemon which were in the original games, so new Mew, Chirachi, and Manaphy. With that in mind, I will begin the story on how my first solo Nuzlocke went. We begin our adventure in the small town of Twinley, where we met our first encounter, our rival, which was named after my friend Kaden, chaotic as ever. After paying some visits, we make our way to Lake Val, where we will lurk over the professor and his assistant, as we like, wow, is there really a legendary in this lake? As they leave, Lucas forgot the briefcase, of course, which had 3 amazing Pokemon. When we went to pick up the briefcase, a storm of Starly showed up, and we resorted to stealing a Pokemon from the briefcase for safety reasons. I hope the professor understands. I left my fate up to Ravia on the random number generator, 1 being Turtwig, 2 being Chimchar, and 3 being Piplup. Fate gave us 2, which was Chimchar. We called the Chimchar Cinder after Cinder Fall. After me and Cinder battled the Starly with our claws, we headed back home to tell our mother about our crimes. But we were told to go to Sand Gem to meet the professor. I hope he likes me. When we arrived at Sand Gem, we rushed straight to the lab where we are told that we can keep the Pokemon I stole. After leaving the lab, we were shown around what buildings exist by Lucas, which I already know by the way. After Lucas tells us to go back home to Mother, I just buy some Pokeballs before we go backwards like a fetch quest. Heading home, I avoided every patch of grass that existed just like I do on the outside world. It scared me for a moment. After we arrived back home to cure ourselves from our trauma of grass, we were given running shoes, a hat, and the permission to roam the worlds of Sinnoh with a burning chimp and a dream to complete a Nuzlocke. After putting on my hat, I swiftly moved on to get my encounters. We first got over my fear of grass and found a Starly, which we catch and call it Sonia. Then Lucas teaches us how to catch a Pokemon not known. I caught one a minute ago. We found ourselves the next encounter in Route 202, which was a Bidoof, in which we call Truth, since he's a rat and rats are close to a mouse. We kept it going until we reached Jubilife City. We arrived in Jubilife City with a fetch quest in mind, which was talk to our rival since he's small brain and forgot a map. Then we go outside to see some guy wants us to find myself around the city. So we search for 3 illusions of myself I need. After getting their coupons, the guy gives us a mythical device called the Poketch, which it's a godsend. After that, we left Jubilife up to Route 204, where we found the beauty of a Shinx. We caught it and called it Makoto. Yes, after Makoto music. After that, we backtracked to get the old rod from a fisherman, and then headed to Route 203 to fight our rival. We approached the rival to battle, and it went down quite easily, which was a surprise. After that battle, I battled every trainer on the route. I kept finding Starly. Since duplication clause, I would have gotten one, but I gave up on finding an Abra after the second clause and used the old rod on a pond for our next encounter, which was a magic card, which I named Ash for several reasons. After catching Ash, I headed into Orberg Gate, where I found a Geodude, I caught it, and called it Top. After exiting the gate, we found ourselves in Orberg City, where we can obtain our very first gym badge. But before that, I'm told that Rourke is mining away in the mines, so we tell him to not mine at night. While we tell Rourke to not mine at night, we found 3 Geodudes in a row, so we caught another Geodude and called it Rock. Before entering the gym, we went to Route 207 and found a Machop and called it Gabe. We left Gabe in the PC with Rock while we defeated Rock, so he wasn't lonely. This battle was the one that told me the games were not the same as the originals, which made this a lot harder. Roach started off with Geodude while I started off with Cinder, who took out the whole gym one by one with powered up match punches. First badge obtained. Hard. Now our first badge obtained, we headed backwards to Jubilife, where we met Team Galactic for the first time, which we swept with Cinder and Makoto while letting Ash splash around to level up faster. I then headed to Route 204 and through the cave. I tried to get a different encounter, but after seeing several of the same Mon, I skipped this encounter entirely and headed to Floraroma Town. After smelling the flowers, we headed to the Valley Windworks, where the door is locked and blocked by a Team Galactic bastards. Before we left to steal a key from Team Galactic Grunt, we went to the grass and caught a Shellos, who we called Enly. After stealing the key, we headed into the Ringworks and met Mars for the first time. I remember this battle being harder at this stage in the original Pearl, but she got rolled by Makoto and Cinder. We then headed into Route 205, where we encountered the Buizel. We caught it and called it Yuri. For now, Yuri will stay in the simulation and bless our luck with a third eye. After fighting all the trainers on the route, we entered Eterna Forest. We met Cheryl, who needed to escort out the forest. We fought every trainer we could on the way out, switch leveling Ash while we fought the trainers. While we were leaving the forest, we encountered a Bidoo and a Cascoon. Struggling to figure out which one I wanted, I closed my eyes and killed one of them. Bidoo was the one that was killed, so we ended up catching Cascoon, who we called Jinx. We shortly left the forest. We entered Eterna City with one thing in mind. To defeat Gardenia before entering the gym, we went to the underground, since it had changed in many ways. But we didn't catch any Pokemon for now. We then entered the gym, burning everything in sight, including Gardenia. Sorry. With our second badge obtained, there is one more thing to do before leaving, and that's, well, two things before we leave Eterna. Greet Cynthia and invade a building being protected by trees. We fought all the grunts in here and met Juniper for the first time. She laid out with a Zubat while I laid out with Cinder, swapping into Makoto to shock the bat, who was defeated by Truth and Cinder. After saving the bike shop person, he gives us a bike, which we go down a cycling road to battle every trainer there. Ash evolves into a beauty of a Gyarados. We then bumped into Lucas, who gave us some Pokédex stuff at the bottom of the road. A new day of the Nuzlocke, and we take our path to Mount Coronet, where we bump into Cyrus for a moment and then leave after ranting about a new world thing. After exiting Mount Coronet into Route 208, battling every trainer there, I tried to find a new encounter, but just like me in the sunlight, I ran away, avoiding to find a non-duplicate encounter. Entering Hearthome now to do some errands, like enter the contest hall as well as a rival battle. He got swept again by Cinder and Ash. After beating the rival again, we started heading to Salacion by going down Route 209. Fighting most of the trainers, we got to Salacion Town. Without thinking about something, we headed upwards to Route 210, where Joy-Con Drift was the only difficulty here. We did encounter a Bonsai, who I let my friend Gabe name it Bailey. While we were here, Toph evolved into a Graveler. We then headed to Route 215, showcasing a display of British weather. While we were here, we found a Kadabra, which I was pretty hyped about at the time. I caught it and called it Shirai to compliment Makoto. Traveling through the rain, we arrived at Veilstone City. Exploring Veilstone City, we headed straight to the apartment store to prepare for the challenges ahead. After buying TMs, we bought some new drip and then headed to the gym. Seeing Lucas worried about his Pokédex, I entered the Veilstone Gym. Entering the Veilstone Gym, and here it truly begins, with Joy-Con Drift causing me pain with the puzzles and the trainers. Getting some extra levels in off the trainers, I battled one, and Sonia fell to a Machoke, getting its revenge. Saddened of our first death, Cinder was brought out and battered the Machoke, avenging Sonia. With Sonia buried into the graveyard, we think of who to drag in. In the end, I bring Rock into the team, readying a sacrifice for Maylene's Lucario. We went back into the gym to finish off the trainers and then challenged Maylene. The challenge began. She led with Meditite while I led with Ash. Meditite got swept and then swapped to Cinder to take care of her Machoke, and then Lucario showed up. I swapped into Top and bulldozed Lucario to a great point. Lucario broke Top like a window, shattering after Cinder was sent out and finished Lucario. Now we have our third badge and 2 deaths. With Toph murdered, I decided to bring Shirai into the team. After that, we went to help Lucas get his Pokédex back, which went quickly. We headed down to Route 214 where we challenged most trainers. While we were down there, Makoto evolved into a violent Luxray. Nice. While moving down, we encountered a Ponyta, which we decided to catch, and let Caden name it Rapidash, cause why not? Approaching Valor Lakefront, we encounter a Cricketoon, which we catch and name it Recap. We then headed to Route 213 for a couple battles, and then headed straight to Pastoria City. We then entered Pastoria City and went straight to the gym, with almost too much confidence on Ash and Makoto for this gym. I was correct, everything got swept. Those two, as well as Truth as a swap, and Rock evolved into a second Graveler. It was another new day, and the first thing we did was go to the Safari Zone. The Safari Zone was just as nostalgic as ever, but sadly, we only went in for one encounter. The encounter was a Krogan, which ran away. Me being sad, went to catch a Remoraid in Pastoria and named it Dial. As we were about to leave Pastoria, we saw a Team Galactic Grunt, who we had to chase down, but our brainlet of a rival wanted to battle, letting the Grunt get away for his sins in assisting the enemy. I swept the rival with Cinder and Ash. Continuing the chase in Route 213, we encountered another Buizel after 3 duplicate encounters. We catch it and call it Natsuki to build up a mini literature club in the PC box, following the Grunt to hell and back until we reach Valor Lakefront. After defeating the Grunt, Cynthia finds her way to us and gives us some medicine to make the Psyduck move out the way, forgetting they existed until now, heading back to Veilstone City to obtain Fly at least. We then headed to Solaceon to head further up into Route 210, battling most trainers there, and while we were there, Cinder evolved into a brute of an Inferno, which was ready to be a maiden in disguise. After a couple more battles, we arrive into Celestic Town, where we head into the ruined artifact tomb in the city, where there's a Team Galactic Grunt blocking the way. So we beat the shit out of the Grunt and then go into the tomb to appreciate Sinnoh's legends. We acquire Surf from Cynthia's mother and then leaving. Cyrus spooks us for a moment and then leaves again. What a twat. With everything done here, we head to Hardhome and challenge Fantina, the 5th badge. Being good at math, I successfully rushed straight to the leader. Not thinking of national deaths or extra levels. Well, maybe hit me in the head with a Bidoof, because here we are early to fight the gym leader. The battle began. Fantina led with a Drifblim while I led with Ash. Ash got hexed to death, and yet again, Cinder avenged Ash with Truth, finishing off the last Miss Magnus, obtaining the 5th badge. With Ash, our main plan for Cynthia dead, I had to bring Enli into the party. Now thinking about potential backup plans, I fly back to Twinleaf Town to catch a Magikarp called C. We then fly back to Jubilife to go to Route 218 to head to Cantileve City. While swimming up for an item, we encounter a Wingull who we call May. Encountering most trainers I could to level up Cinder and Enli, fighting many Magikarp later, we head to Cantileve City. When we arrive into Cantileve City, we encounter our rival who yet again wants to battle. And for once, nearly everyone on the team took care of a Pokemon each, which was refreshing. We then pass the bridge and decide to go to Iron Island for a detour. We then enter a mini training arc to help Riley find Team Galactic. Before finding Riley, we encountered a Golbat in which we caught it Shauna. As went through to Riley, we helped him. He offers to give us an egg, which we accept for later on. After Iron Island, we entered the Cantileve Gym. The gym got swept left, right, and center until we found our gym leader, and the battle started smoothly, with him leading into Bronzor and me leading with Truth. With Truth using Trick Room and Confuse Ray, Truth the absolute Chad ignored confusion like me ignoring people in high school. Steelix was next, and I was stuck with Truth to use Yawn on it. With it nearly murdering Truth after hitting Yawn, I had to make a sacrifice, and a sacrifice I made. Sending Rock out to take Steelix's next Earthquake with one insta-killing Rock. Now with our sacrifice, I could send out Cinder while it's asleep, with a Mach Punch and a Flamethrower, taking it down. The boy Bastion showed up. The boy Bastidon showed up, which got barraged with punches and defeated. We now have our 6th badge. With Rock being sent to the mine shaft to never return, with our very small collection of Pokemon, I decided to let Shauna join the team. After deciding who to take on our team yet again, we headed to the library where we meet the squad and get told that Team Galactic wants some rare Pokemon at all 3 of the lakes. Our rival was assigned to Acuity, Lucas at Verity, and me at Valor, which was nice. After being assigned the mission at the debriefing, we headed to Lake Valor. avoiding every Team Galactic member possible and going straight to Saturn. Saturn led with Kadabra while I led with Truth. After a crunch, Saturn withdrew into Toxicroak, to which we crunch and yawn at it. After nearly dying by Toxicroak's revenge, I swapped into Makoto to take a hit, and then swapped into Shirai while it sleeps, knowing of Sucker Punch. Toxicroak didn't wake up, and it got mauled by Psychic. Saturn then brings out Bronzor to where I swapped into Cinder to burn it. Bringing Kadabra back, I swapped to Makoto. The Joy-Con drift struck again and made me pick Volt Switch, which wouldn't have mattered anyway since Kadabra died. Flying to Sand Gem Town to heal, and then we helped Lucas at Lake Verity, to where we find Commander Mars. The battle began as she led with Golbat and I led with Cinder. This battle, I had a battle of my own, which was the cat I was looking after, which was the hardest part of the battle because Cinder swept Mars. Struggling to fly on Joy-Con drift, we fly. But before flying to Mount Coronet, I take a trip to Route 212 in the Trophy Garden, where I catch a Bidoof and a Pikachu. I named them both Riaz and Raikou respectively. We then fly to Celestic Town and head to Route 211, where we find a nice knockdown. We catch it and call it Lunar. Forgetting where I get strength from, I visited the Lost Tower back in Route 209 to acquire it. While we were there, we encountered a Ghastly, who we caught and named it Eliza. We then obtained strength at the top of the tower. After that, we flew back to Celestic Town and headed to Mount Coronet, and then up to Route 216, where we are now get to see the festive cheer with snow that you don't get with most UK cities. Being festive, we encountered a Snover, which we catch and call it Blitzen, because fuck Rudolph. Finding rock climb buried into the snow, we headed further up the mountain. We find ourselves on Route 217, where I tried to go for a Sneasel, but 3 Snovers in a row show up. We then catch the third one and call it Aegis, but not all hope is lost. When we reached the Cutie Lake front, we encountered a Sneasel, which we caught and called it Ray. Arriving at Snow Point City, I wanted to do some preparation before Candace. I was made aware that I can now get a lucky egg from here using the underground. There was no point in waiting until the next stream to forget about it, so we headed into the Grand Underground. Heading to the Icy Cave in the underground, there was a whole new experience compared to the original games, which was nice. I arrived at the Icy Cave, with Bronzor and Baneri following me as I picked up the lucky egg. Getting trapped to a wall, Bronzor was encountered. We catch it and call it Silver. We then ended for the day and left the underground. On a new day, we headed straight to the gym, since there was no point in waiting. I'll stop when we're out of here, I promise. Entering the gym, I saw the snowball puzzle and knew of the diagonal walking ramp glitch. But since I am what you call a gamer, I did the puzzle legitly and swept every trainer, including Candace with only Cinder. After melting the ice, I headed to Lake Acuity to beat up the Team Galactic guards. After that, I headed in and saw that Juniper had won against my rival. After Juniper leaves, we then head back to Veilstone City to where we take over another building. Entering the building, picking a fight with every trainer possible in the building, I eventually found Cyrus, who was sat waiting for me to arrive for some reason. He waited to get an L. Sorry Cyrus, try again at Spear Pillar. After telling me that Saturn is in a portal with the Lake Trio, I headed straight to him as Cyrus left for the Spear Pillar. Arriving into it, Saturn's team got swept by Cinder. After that, we headed to Mount Coronet. I'll admit this, I got a bit lost here. But in the end, I made it to Spear Pillar, where we fought Mars and Juniper with our rival. That fight went down with just Cinder and Truth for Stung Tank. We then fight Cyrus again, who expected us to have a training act, because he sure as hell did. Either way, the team swept him with only 1 injury on Makoto, barely surviving. Then we encountered... I used the Master Ball at the end. Before leaving Mount Coronet as a whole, we went to finally get my encounter from here, which we ended up finding in Obama Snow and called it Albedo. I then started to head towards Route 222 to where we can find our next encounter and get to Sunny Shore City. We encountered a Glammeow and called it Nem, for the cat that's been living with me during the Nuzlocke. I arrived in Sunny Shore City. I arrived in Sunny Shore City with one goal in mind, and that's to get my 8th badge. With the plan of sweeping with Enly and Cinder, I went into the gym and did exactly that, and also Sean evolved into a lovely Crobat when we finished the gym. After getting our 8th and last gym badge, I made my way upwards to where Jasmine gave me Waterfall. After that, I began heading to Victory Road, ignoring most trainers on Route 223 because I wanted to get the lead quickly. Before entering Victory Road, I encountered a Tentacool and called it Ivy. I then entered Victory Road, entering the last frontier before the Pokemon League. Of course, here I expected challenging trainers, so I tried to fight them all for the most XP for the team, especially for Cinder since I planned for Cinder to be a massive part in Cynthia's team, Roserade and Lucario as well as Spiritomb. After the maze, which is Victory Road, I arrived at the Pokemon League and then bought tons of Hyper Potions to be ready for after battle healing. A new day arrived, and I decided to get the Elite Four rival battle out of the way, and that man was built different this time around. He led with Staraptor while I led with Makoto. This is where I noticed the game is built different. Now the rival and the Elite Four have held items, as well as IVs and EVs. I noticed that after Staraptor used to focus Sash, it only took an extra spark to take out Staraptor. He then brought out Snorlax, and I swapped into Cinder, which Snorlax got murdered immediately with close combat. Our rival then brought out Empoleon, so I swapped for Ainley for Earth Power. Next turn he goes for Grass Knot, not a move I expected here. After a close call, I thought I would use Grass Knot again for Ainley, so this is where I send out Cinder to predict the Grass Knot, but no, he used Brine, insta-killing Cinder. Now with Cinder out of the picture, we had to carry on. So I bought out Makoto to avenge Cinder with a spark. Empoleon was murdered. Rapidash was next, and I had no choice but to bring Enly back out. Rapidash went for a Mega Horn, but like the Chad Enly is, she dodged it and recovered twice, to then murder Rapidash moments later. Next was Roserade, so I bought out Shirai, and Roserade got swept. Then was Heracross, and since again with the same weakness, Shirai was kept on. I outsped, but there just wasn't enough damage on my Psychic and was murdered by Thief. I then bought out Shauna to avenge Shirai and win the battle for us. After sadly losing Cinder and Shirai, I decided to begin a training arc. For replacement, I had put Albedo and Rapidash the Ponyta on the team. I had a thought, which was to see if the Daycare still works like Gen 4 games that gave levels. So I put Drifty and Rapidash in the Daycare, while soul training Albedo to catch up with the rest. I tried Victory Road, and I tried the Leak Pond to level up, while taking a detour to get heart skills in the underground. I noticed that Pokemon are higher levels here, but didn't take advantage of that until later. A wild Wingull approached me in the underground, with Albedo in the lead. Instead of running, I fight, but didn't expect it to have Hurricane. So Albedo got Aminoed away to Celestia. Leaving the underground for a bit, I replaced Albedo with Blitzen the Snover. Being assisted by Gabe, a friend of mine, we go searching for heart skills on the map and fighting trainers I haven't done yet. While finding heart skills, I had the thought of catching a Gibble from Wayward Cave, so over there I went. Firstly getting Mira out of there with a repel. I admittedly used a map on Google Images to find the way to Mira and out the cave. I then went to the secret entrance on the Cycle Road. While exploring, the first one that showed up was a Gibble, which I caught and named it Essianise. After exploring Wayward Cave, I took a trip back to Solaceon to find out that Daycare doesn't work like Gen 4 but now Gen 8. Kinda disappointed, but not surprised. With that plan failed, I decided to go with Essianise as our 6th member of the team. Now with my team set, I experimented with easy and safe ways to level up the stragglers. I tried the Versus Seeker, but it was unreliable since I would forget which trainer had what Pokemon, and uncertainties are something I can struggle with at times. Basically, it's a skill issue on my part. I then remembered about the Wingull earlier and went back to the underground, specifically the icy cave area, where there were Mr. Mimes, Machokes, and Pachirisus to battle for very high XP per one. With Shauna in lead for a couple hours, Essionis evolved into a Garchomp, but I now wanted to speed up her leveling even more. So it was getting late at night, and I was getting to the end of the day. Earlier in the day, Essionis melted the Mr. Mimes, but this one, the last one of the night, and it murdered Essionis in confusing fashion. With that disappointment behind me, I ended the day there. New day, and I thought of a plan. The plan was to hash the Riolu egg and power level it for the Elite Four for the next day. After a couple minutes in Floraroma, I hatched the Riolu and called it Chaos. We then went back to the underground to the same icy caves with Crobat in lead for 5 hours. After the 5 hours of struggling in the underground, Chaos got to level 69. Nice. And then we were ready to fight the Elite Four the very next day. Here we are, ready to challenge the final frontier of this run. With the end game getting difficult, I knew that this was going to be a challenge, so I walked into the doors of no return and started fighting. First there was Aron, the bug trainer who got swept by Truth, Shauna, and Enli with the Raytheon. Next was Bertha, the ground trainer who got swept by Truth, Enli, and Blitzen. But while I was in this battle, I found out that Woodhammer does a lot of recoil damage, which changed how things would go against Cynthia's Milotic when we got there. Flint was next, the fire trainer, and he got swept by Truth, Enli, and Mikoto, with not many scratches. Lucian was the last, who is a psychic trainer. He got swept by Truth, Enli, and Sean, with a nearly escape of death. Here we are, about to set foot in Cynthia's room of championship. Challenging her to a battle was why we were here, so that's what we did. She led with Spiritomb, while I led with Truth to set Stealth Rocks up. After a Dark Pulse turn 1, I swapped into Enli, who took 2 Surfs to kill Spiritomb. With Roserade next, I swapped into Shauna, who one-shot Roserade. Milotic was next, and I swapped into Mikoto. I started off with a substitute, but her Scald kept fading in, so that was pretty pointless. So all I could do was Spark. With Mikoto nearly dead, I thought I'd try Blitzen's Woodhammer, but perfectly, she swapped into Gastrodon and insta-killed it with Woodhammer. Lucario was next, and debating who to bring out next, I bought out Chaos thinking I could outspeed, but forgetting about EVs and IVs, her Lucario outsped mine, insta-killing Chaos with a crit. So I sent Enli back out. I had to recover. And after surviving on 10 HP, I recovered more and more until she started setting up for my death, which was my opportunity to attack with Earth Power. She mistakenly set up Nasty Plot again on the second turn, and by the time she was using it, I murdered Lucario with Earth Power. Milotic was coming back into the field, so I swapped back into Mikoto. She started to take my advice because she started recover spam as I spawned. The one time I didn't have a physical power-up move on Mikoto. As I started using Crunch for defense buff, Mikoto got murdered with Scald. I swapped into Blitzen, and I went for an Aurora Veil because she recovered with me. With me spamming Woodhammer, she used up her full restore and then recoil for Blitzen. I swapped to Truth next. As she used another full restore, I went for a Curse, and then started crunching it for the debuff. She started to recover every couple turns, as I wanted to crit or a debuff. As I got her to 1, she full restored, but finally got 1 debuff, but it didn't matter, since Truth died a heroic death the very next turn. I swapped over to Enli and used Earth Power several turns until Milotic died, burning me on its way out. Garchomp was last, and all I had was Enli and Shauna on my side. So I kept Enli on. The first turn, Garchomp decided to use Sword Dance, powering itself up readying for my death. As all fate was lost against the Sword Dance powered up Garchomp, She went for an earthquake, and I survived. The power of friendship being pretty pog for once, and let Inley finish off the whole Nuzlocke run on 1 HP. With the run to an end, we go back to our journey as we give our respects to the fallen Pokemon. From Sonia to Cinder to Truth, we stand forward and improve as a trainer. From trying to read to just dumb luck. As we took back our journey and we say thank you. Thank you for the journey. Thank you for taking my mistakes that got several moms killed and learning not to do those mistakes again. And finally, thank you for watching the Nuzlocke video. May the moonlight grant you great fortune, and I will see you here next in 2022. Have a happy new year, and sayonara.